Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the patriarchy and racial oppression. So it seems like more and more women are sort of waking up to the realities of living under the patriarchy. And more women are choosing to withhold their bodies, their labor, and their support from patriarchal expectations. And now you can also see that this social change is part of what is starting to destabilize white supremacy in the United States. And this is because historically the racial hierarchy has always been intertwined with the patriarchy. Both systems have depended heavily on women's participation, whether willing or coerced, to reproduce their norms, police their boundaries, and legitimize their power. Now, when women stop carrying water for the patriarchy, they are withdrawing from roles that have long upheld oppressive systems, such as emotional labor that smooths over men's dominance and shields them from accountability, the silence and self suppression that prevents collective resistance, the respectability performance that signals loyalty to the system in exchange for conditional safety, horizontal policing, where women discipline other women to stay within patriarchal norms, and gatekeeping that frames compliance as virtue and dissent as deviance, just to name a few. Patriarchy has always relied on women to enforce its rules because it is most stable when the subordinated group polices itself. When women refuse these rules, the system loses one of its most efficient enforcement mechanisms. Now, what does all of this have to do with white supremacy? Well, like the patriarchy, white supremacy has always depended on women, especially white women, in several key ways. The reproduction of racial boundaries through marriage norms, purity narratives, and control of sexuality has always been essential to supremacists' goals. In addition, there's respectability politics that frames white femininity as the moral center of the nation, justifying racialized punishment of others. Moral panics have been used repeatedly to rationalize racial violence, segregation, and policing. Cultural compliance has often been used to soften or sanitize racist policies. In addition, through horizontal enforcement, white women have been central to school board fights, school book bans, anti immigration movements, and other forms of community level racial control. When women, especially white women, reject these roles, white supremacy loses a crucial source of moral authority, and everyday enforcement of the system becomes more brittle because it can no longer rely on the appearance of broad social consensus. The reason why these refusals are happening now is kind of complicated. I mean, several social shifts are converging. There's greater visibility in modern society of structural harm, making compliance feel morally untenable. There is a rise in collective feminist consciousness, especially around emotional labor, coercive control, gendered expectations, and so forth, and that has raised awareness. Intersectional analysis has come to the foreground, which exposes how patriarchy and white supremacy operate in tandem. And there's also been like the rise of these backlash movements like MAGA, which has pushed many women to recognize the costs of compliance with the system. MAGA, the red pill movement, all of these things. In addition, digital communities reduce isolation and make resistance more contagious, allowing people to compare notes, so to speak, which is, I personally believe, one reason why these narratives of digital and social media harm are pushed so hard in our society. Not that there isn't some validity to them, but it is sort of a countermeasure against the realizations and community that is coming out of certain parts of the internet. And I'm sure there are more There are more aspects to all of this than I'm listing here. But anyway, as more women refuse to perform this kind of emotional, cultural, and political labor that stabilizes hierarchy, both patriarchy and white supremacy lose their soft power, the everyday, normalized, taken for granted behaviors that keep them running. The point is not that hierarchies collapse because the powerful suddenly lose strength or interest in wielding power. They collapse because when the people who were quietly maintaining the system stop cooperating, the system collapses. Women's refusal is not just symbolic. It moves the social infrastructure that these systems depend on, thereby hastening their end.